Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, Screenwriting Step by Step, Volume 23, in our ongoing series of watching me take the process of writing a pilot script, a drama pilot, from first idea to finished script. It's a lot of steps, it's a lot of sessions, but if it is helpful to you to watch somebody take all of these steps, that's what I'm here for. I am also here every Monday through Friday, as long as I can, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in the United States, so that you can ask me almost anything. Watch live, make comments, ask questions, and if for some reason you are not available to sit here live and ask questions, you can still ask. Go to writingforscreens.com and click on the Contact Me button on almost any page, or the Contact Me tab, and you can contact me. You can ask a question. It will go to me as an email. I will answer it as best I can, either here or directly to you if it seems like that's the best solution. In addition, anyone who wants to, if you're watching this as a video, click a question into the comments. Ask me, comment in the comments, ask me questions in the comments. That is what we are doing here. I am AMAing. Ask me almost anything. But first, the beginning of each volume here, I'm going to try and go through what I did today working on this pilot. In this case, working on the story. Trying to fill in the spots of the outline that were not yet written in. So let us look at my notes for today. Let's go back to the beginning, and here we are. It is the 13th of July, and the first question I had is, I know that someone has to volunteer to go to steal the files from Madeline, which is what provokes Norman to step in and gets the whole story started. So my question is, who is that? Okay, they have to be scary enough for it to make sense that Norman is going to drop everything and run to Madeline's and try and prevent this person from breaking in and stealing. So therefore, they have to be sort of a dangerous person, but at the same time, I don't particularly want them to be evil because they're part of the team. They're part of our hero group. And so I thought of the character Walter in The Big Lebowski. There's a great line where the dude says, "It's not that you're wrong, Walter. It's that you're an asshole." And I thought that's exactly who we need here. We need someone who is not necessarily bad. They're just, their manner is such that they are dangerous. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this lesson that you can learn from this, which is, it is perfectly fine to say, oh, I want this character to be like that character. By the time you get done with it, if you are doing good writing, it's not going to be a ripoff of the, it's going to be your version of that archetype. And there are a lot of archetypes out there, and you should not be afraid to use them. I apologize if you are hearing a large gas-powered motor. Someone is gardening in one of my neighbor's houses. Anyway, so yeah, the answer is there is nothing wrong with taking an idea for a scene or a plot twist or a character from something that you've seen and liked, or even something that you haven't liked that you just think, I could do it better than that. I actually do that a lot. The more, this is worth saying straight, the more that you can absorb examples from other work, the better. That's like your toolbox. It's like your crayon kit, and you want the 64 crayons. You don't want the 8. Because when I think about characters, I have this huge collection of people that I have seen in other movies, and I can take them and try and use them as sort of your basic model to then twist and shape into the new version that is going to come alive and become a person. The way that characters become people, the way that they become alive to the audience, is a lot of steps, and it's always based in something. might be based in somebody you once met, might be based in another character, might be based in you, might be based in a philosophical concept. Doesn't matter. Whatever you do, you're going to build on there. So in this case, we are building on Walter from The Big Lebowski, and the idea that well-intended asshole who tends to mess things up or has the potential to mess things up. So then my question becomes, what kind of asshole? Specifically, what's the type of asshole that makes this person a person that I want to write about and that fits into the story? Are they a reckless asshole? Are they an angry asshole? Walter was the angry asshole. Are they paranoid? Are they prone to panic and therefore to overreaction? In other words, they're an asshole defensively. They believe that they are about to be attacked and so they behave badly. So I was thinking, this was just brainstorming. I just thought, what kinds of asshole are there, excluding evil assholes? I want this to be a likable asshole. That's actually an important part. The thing about Walter is vaguely likable. Because John Goodman is personally likable, we kind of like Walter, but damn, he's right on the edge. Anyway, I like this idea of, I had just sort of written down like reckless, and then I thought hyped on, and I was reckless because of artificial stimulus, because of like just walking too fast, talking too fast, thinking too fast, too aggressive. I just like this concept of the artificially assholed up. And that gave me the idea of that this person is a drug dealer. It's a drug addict, drug dealer, a meth character. Because we often, this is a classic, another classic archetype, a known character. And I thought, why not have this criminal, this meth dealer, this dangerous and foolish person also has feelings. They have a sense of justice. They are trying to hunt down serial killers, not entirely perhaps cognizant of the fact that they are, in a sense, a serial killer themselves or a potential. So I just like the idea of this meth dealer with a sense of justice, a sense of, hey, you know, it's not that far from The Godfather. It's not that far from so many criminals that we have seen in movies, but I haven't personally seen this one that I can think of. And that's the other thing I want to talk about is when you're working on a character or anything else, there's this moment when you think, oh, I like that. For me, it's the feeling is, oh, I've never seen that. That's original. That's interesting. I personally like. We're gonna come out of this. I personally like when I'm watching something to have a sense of I don't know what's going to happen next. That's hard when you've seen a lot of stuff and when you spend your time thinking of characters and stories. You can kind of read between the lines a lot. And so if something is really by the book, if it's really machine made and predictable, I can see where it's going and I'm bored. So for me, the biggest kick is when something is just even a little bit, I don't know what's going to happen. So that is, I'm on the lookout for that. You should always be on the lookout for the things that you like, the things that you're going to be willing to commit to say, yeah, that's the sort of thing I would write. It's different for everybody. For me, I've never seen that particular twist before. Or if I haven't, it just feels like, no, that would amuse me as an audience. That's really important. What would amuse you as an audience? By the way, I'll just take a minute to say, Wolf Power said hello, so I will say hello. Hello, and hello to the other people who are watching live. I know you're out there. I see your little numbers, but I don't know who you are. Let us move on because the part where I came up with this character of the meth dealer member of the group was actually pretty easy. By the way, one of the things that was going on here is when I come on live, I am not mostly writing in front of you because that would take way too long and honestly be a little boring. The truth is there's a lot of staring into space and indecisiveness and fumfering. And I don't want you to be watching that. I want you to see the actual work, the process. We're going to just say hello to Exili. So what I do is I spend a few hours during the day working, actually writing. And I take these notes and then I just go back over it with you here in a condensed form. So let's get to the part where it was hard, where it went wrong, where I'm not quite sure what we've got yet. The other thing is the names. I would spend a little time working on the names. And so in the overview, what I did was, thank you, Kia. Kia John. Oh, Kia, John 415. Cool. I am really glad to be here. If you are getting something from it, this is really cool for me. And wow, hello, Beverly Wood from England. Yo, hi, hello from Los Angeles. So here's the deal. What I wanted to do is it helps to give your characters names. It doesn't have to be the name they're going to eventually have, but there's something about certain steps that helps. So I just went through the overview and I gave them all names. And the names I gave them were almost all, frankly, I'd started with the cop being Elms, from Fred Elms, who is a cinematographer. Cinematographers often have really cool names. So I just started using cinematographers' names. So George is George Roisman after Owen Roisman. Phenomenal. They're all good. I didn't put any bad cinematographers in here. Elmore Deakins for Roger Deakins. Elmore, also just Elmore Leonard. So then I started just taking, the last names were so distinctive that I knew I wouldn't get away with actually having the characters named that. Elswit, Darius Kanji, Emmanuel Luzbecki. So I just started using their last names as first names just to give me something to work with. So I ended up with a character named Elswit Kanji. I know this person is probably not going to stay that name. I was just having some fun. You got to entertain yourself. Oh, and Peter Andrews is the pseudonym of Steven Soderbergh when he does his own cinematography. Anyway, so either Luzbecki Andrews or Elswit Kanji is going to be the meth dealer. So moving on, getting back to the cop, Detective Elms, because this is where we get into a real puzzle. We have this situation where we're going to have a serial killer essentially identify themselves to our heroes and say, I am the killer, but I did not do this killing. And that's this is a great question. Are there any legalities around names? Yes, there are. Do not use a real person's name fully. Like I was taking pieces of other people's names and putting them together. And you can do that. Like Elswit Kanji, I can get away with because there ain't nobody that named that. One thing you should do towards the end of your writing process is just Google all your character names. The deal with this is, if there is only one person or one or two people with your character's name, that's a problem. If there are like 50, like Beverly Wood, I have a feeling that there's probably a bunch of Beverly Woods out there. So I could probably try and use your name, but the best thing to do is just not do it. Scramble it up. Take one name from one person, one name from another person, mess with the names a little, but do recognize that using an actual person's name is possibly grounds for a lawsuit because you are saying this person is behaving like this character, which is not true. So the answer is just Google all the main characters' names. See if there's only one of them, change it. There is actually, when you get into production, there will be a legal department for the movie that will check the names. But if they run into a problem, you will have to change them. So all of this is, great problems to have. You should be so lucky as to have the possibility that the legal department is telling you to change a name. That's the good news. But for while you're working, try not to use real people's names, but try to use pieces of real names if they help you, as they help me. Because I've been doing this for 30 or more years. It's easy to run out of names, honestly. It's easy to run out of the names that you can think of offhand. So you could just go on the internet. Like I said, I like to go in the end credits of big comic book movies, Marvel movies, because they have literally 1,000 or more names running through those credits, and they tend to be interesting names. So you take a piece of one, take a piece of another. Let's get back to the plot, because this is a serious problem. We have these characters who are hunting a serial killer. The serial killer contacts them and says, I did not do this last murder. But in doing that, the serial killer identifies that they're still alive, they're still out there, they are findable. Why would our people not tell the cops? I always like to get praise. You're welcome. Great advice. Thank you. Why wouldn't they tell the cops? And if they do tell the cops, why wouldn't the cops get on the case and therefore take the story away from our main characters, which we obviously do not want to happen? So either they have to not tell the cop, or the cop has to not take them seriously. So I started working on the why wouldn't the detective take them seriously. First thing I thought was, it's a cold case, just not into it. It's like, I've got a murder here. It's a recent murder. It happened yesterday, and I need to find this killer, and I don't believe that this person is the same person as did the serial murders. So I said, after this cop is simply after who killed George. That's their case. But then I asked myself, honestly, if you go to a detective who's working on their case and you say, hey, I've got evidence that links to a serial killer and you could help find the serial killer, there's very few cops who are not going to say, that's worth taking seriously. So this is something you should think about. When you are stuck, I'm going to make this big. When you are stuck, you are usually clinging to something, usually clinging to a lot of things. I am personally at this moment clinging to the idea that the cop is going to turn them down. I am clinging to the idea, like there's a bunch of things where I'm like, oh, well, I had a scene where this was going to happen, where the character does this. And so I'm those are getting in the way of the pure, simple logic, which is at the end of this, of whatever happens in this episode, I think it makes more sense that they don't tell the cop. It's more logical that they would have reasons to not tell the cop than that the cop doesn't take a legitimate clue seriously. I had gotten hung up. I was clinging to the idea that they have to tell the cop. But the truth is, if you find yourself stuck on something, think, what is it that I'm clinging to that maybe I could change that would loosen this up, that would open up possibilities? Because there are probably more logical possibilities for why they don't tell the cop than for why the cop doesn't do their job. What I thought was, ideally, at the end of this sequence where the killer talks to them, they decide not to tell the police. I had, the other day, thought that Xena would be of the belief that we have to publicize it, that transparency is our protection. That's a thought, not the only thought. It could also work that they sort of come to, oh, yes, here's my note. That would relieve the cop of having to be so illogical as to not follow up on solid evidence. So then I thought, is there any way at the end of this sequence where the killer reaches to them that they agree not to hunt or expose the killer, and the killer agrees not to kill them? That maybe they're like, hey, let's all de-escalate here. I thought that was really cool, because then both sides after that privately realize they can't keep their word, that they have to try and hunt or expose the killer, and the killer realizes, I gotta kill these people. They know too much. I like this concept, this idea of this is where this this pilot is ending. So let me go to that because I think it's worth just putting down. Let me see. Okay, for the moment, I'm just going to put it here at the beginning of this. And I'm just going to make this a note in the form of literally a note to myself. Hey, don't forget this. Ideally, at the end of these calls, there we go. Notes there. So that's a good idea, but it's hard to pull off. I'm going to have to think out all the steps for how it is that that we get to this psychological place where they've agreed to this and he's agreed to that. So that is my next task. That is the next thing. And the way I'm going to do that is by going step by step through these scenes where the killer contacts them, because that's the turning point. That's the story point. So what I did here is I said, okay, what is the action? What is the killer doing when they call? Are they calling to threaten? And I believe the main point of this call is to say, I didn't do this. Basically, like, stop hunting me. I'm not guilty. And in order to convince them of that, the killer has to take a step. The killer has to prove that they are the killer and that they are believable. So that's going to be fun, because I thought, okay, the killer calls this, I'm the killer, but I didn't do this. And they're like, well, why should we believe you? And so the killer has to prove, Deakins has to prove that he is the killer, which would be just fun. And that would be sort of unexpected on their part and on his, like, it's not like he thought he was going to call them and say, hey, cut it out. And they were going to be like, whoa, the killer, talk to us. We're believing him. It never occurred to the killer that they'd have to prepare to prove themselves. And this is one of those things, when you are working, you have to, like, you go from I'm thinking logically about the plot to I am thinking what it is like in this moment. This killer is calling for this purpose. What do they think? How do the other people react to it? And that's how you begin to play out a scene in your mind. It's a different kind of thinking from just logical brainstorming. It's what would I think they would say here? So what I thought was they'd say, like, how do we know? And so the killer would theoretically know things that only the killer would know, right? The killer would say, like, there was a hairband on the victim's wrist and I took it or something. But then I thought, okay, but if it's stuff that only the killer would know, how do they know if it's true? I mean, he could be just saying anything. So this began to get to be an interesting scene. And this is what happens is you're trying to plot, but you're also trying to make a scene. And that's when you start to have the fun of writing. It's like, okay, I don't know if I can use this, but it seems like a really good scene if this thing where, like, the secret message starts to get frustrating for both people because they're not trusting each other and they're thinking out what each is saying and pointing out holes in it. So I think that's cool. At some point, they do believe him, and so they tell him that there isn't any evidence, because basically he's saying, you gotta stop hunting me. You can't use that evidence. Don't, just let sleeping dogs lie. And they say, and basically, he has to say, Deakins says, let sleeping dogs lie, or I will have to kill you. This is motivation for them to actually let things lie. If he's saying, look, I don't want to kill you, but I will if you keep pushing this. And they say, okay. Truth is, we don't have any evidence. And so that's as far as I have gotten at the moment. And I began to think about who Deacons is, why this evil killer is an evil killer. And I started to just think, what would be the reason that one would kill? And often there's like, oh, they had a horrible childhood kind of thing, and that's true. But I believe that in this case, I want this to be about, like, why do people kill? I think a lot of the reason that people kill is because it makes them feel powerful, which is kind of an addiction. They feel good. They feel immortal themselves, but they certainly feel, and obviously we'll have to think about why they need this, but I just felt like this is an important thing. He killed to feel power. Okay, so at this point, got 5 people on here. Does anyone have a question? I'm going to take a little break here from the from step by step and ask me almost anything. Feel free, if you've got a question, I would be happy to answer it. If not, I am preparing to do a full Ask Me Almost Anything episode because I've gotten some complex questions that I need to think about how to answer. But we got a question here. Can I recap the how to organize a project, the text folder, which I have not used? Yes, absolutely. Fine question. Let's do this. Here's the deal. This is the way I organize things. It is not the only way to organize things. I would just suggest that however you write, that you do organize things, that you try and think in terms of, I need to have different places where I do different kinds of thinking. That you want to have workspace. That's really the most important thing about this. The point of this is not to be checked, so nobody's going to come by and look at your homework and see, oh, you did this right or you did this wrong. This is private. It is workspace. But the thing that I think you need to do is separate out some kind of notes or talking to yourself kind of place. That's what I do here. Where literally I will just ask myself questions. I will write down everything I can think of. I try to do it here. Sometimes I end up doing it in the outline or other places. But I believe you should have a document in which you simply have a place to talk to yourself on the page. You can sit here, demonstrate this. You can sit here and say, I wonder what this character is like. Well, I guess they're like this. Things tend to slip away when you think that way, when you are thinking and not writing. It is a very good idea to write down the thoughts. I don't worry about spelling or full sentences or anything else. I just type out what I am thinking, which includes typing out the question. Like, I will say to myself, why can't that's it. Or, what kind of asshole? As I ask myself the question on paper and then answer it on paper, I answered 5 different possibilities. And then I said, oh, I like this one. Now, obviously, this is all stuff you can just think in your head, but it goes fast. If you're thinking a lot of stuff, I would not remember those 4 or 5 pages worth of notes if I had not worked on the page, thought on the page. So that is what the notes are for. Now the text, which I have not gotten to yet, but in theory, the text is where you actually write, like, Madeline opens the door and steps in. She sees the chalk outline on the floor. Truthfully, I would probably do the text in Final Draft or in whatever software you're using to actually have, did I do that here? No. Okay. So in order to break out your dialogue in dialogue script format, the point about the text is it's actually the script. It's the words, the script itself. I'm not ready to go there, so you haven't seen me work there, but you will once we get past the outline, which is really, it's weeks and weeks and weeks of work. So it can take months to do an outline. When you've got the whole outline, then you begin to go through the outline scene by scene, or jump around, whatever you want, and say, okay, how am I going to write that scene from outline into the script? That's what the text is. Then the other things in this folder, I've got notes. I've got the overview, which is basically sort of the big impressions, like a little description of each character, a little summary of the show itself, a summary of who the character, the main relationships. It's sort of the overview. It's sort of like the notes, the crib sheet for yourself, the reminder, the flashcards of, don't forget, this is who this person is. This is the style of this script. This is the model for this script. You want to keep the overview small, and eventually you will have to write a version of it to give to other people for a series. But for yourself, I personally believe it's a good idea to just have a little place where you can put what you think the script is about, what the characters are about. And sometimes notes to myself like, don't forget, I think I actually have it here, that this is this story is a cascade of fumbles. That's just an important thing to remember, because, for instance, that scene I just described where he calls them and then they don't believe him and he has to prove it, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's the method of this particular script. Not every script is going to be full of people making so many mistakes. So I like to write that for myself so that when I'm feeling like I don't know what this is about, I can look here. That's what the overview is. And then I have a folder for research. I've been filling it with articles about journalism and serial. This is an article about the way that crowdsourcing has changed crime solving, and a little thing about Mary McNamara, who was wrote "I'll Be Gone in the Dark," which was on my mind when I started to do this. Anyway, that's just research, just articles, thoughts, anything. When I get into more about podcasting, I'll do more research about that. And those are the main shapes of documents that I like to work in. Does that answer your question? Excellent. Let me know. In the meantime, look at this. Did answer. Got it. So the text is actually composing of the script. Yes. The text we haven't gotten to but I call it text just because it's the text. It's the script. You could call it script. Call it whatever you want. But that is the actual script itself. One more question here from Jesse J. I recently saw your video about agents. What really struck me is what you said about getting to a producer. I'm about to finish the script, so trying to learn next steps. Yes, I am. This is a hard thing. The business is changing, and the business has changed from when I started. But I do believe that getting to producers is always a good step. I also believe that one good way to get to producers is, at least at the moment, I believe, through film festivals. Indie producers tend to pay attention to film festivals. The other thing is, remember, you probably shouldn't shoot. I mean, it's lovely to try and get to, Brian Grazer and Ron Howard, or don't get to Scott Rudin. Do not. But to go to the big producers, sure, they are, J.J. Abrams, they can snap their fingers and you have a deal. But they also have a billion people coming towards them, and they are operating at a very high level, and you may not be there yet. But there will be people at a lower level who can get you up the ladder. It's steps. It's a process. Um, it's small steps. Yeah, trust the process. There we go. Trust the process. It is a long-term, lifelong commitment to doing this. At least, if not lifelong, a hunkier life. The point is, it's not a one-time thing. You don't just like write it, say, okay, I'm going to write one script, and if it doesn't make it, that tells me I shouldn't be a writer. Nah. Anyway, I don't know, like 5, 6, and I got an agent from them, and I got producers liking my work, and I was an office temp and writing scripts for 12 years. You just never know. It's not like there's a dividing line when you're in and you're out. There's a lot of little steps on the way, and small producers, indie producers, wannabe producers, work with the people who are near your level, maybe a little above you, and then you all go up together because you bring them your talent and they bring them their producing skills and their producing determination. That's really how you get stuff done. And then you do that and you make a couple of things with different people, and all of a sudden you know a lot of people. Because the other thing that happens is you meet people as you do it. You meet actors, you meet cinematographers, you meet publicity people, and they say, oh, I like your work. And then you can say to them, do you know any producers? It just happens. That's how it happens. It doesn't happen from you being outside, way nobody, and you send your script in to the biggest producers in Hollywood, and they take it and lift you up into Olympus. That's not how it usually happens. Sending query letters and all that, yeah, I mean, honestly, if you ask them, they're going to say, we get too many. We have no reason to believe that you are any good. It's not like there is no such thing as an idea that is so great that someone is going to say, stop the presses. That idea is so cool. I am going to break every rule and take a person who I've never heard about and invite them to my office. There's no such thing as that good an idea. Almost any idea could be great, could be terrible. So the main thing that you should probably focus on is getting your work out there in the forms that currently are accessible to that. There are contests. There are screenwriting conferences. I personally have been to the Austin Screenwriting Conference. I thought it was fabulous. I loved it. They have people who have written scripts. They submit them. They read them. Some of them become finalists, semifinalists. I did a class with a bunch of the semifinalists. Austin Film Festival said, hey, would you spend an hour or so and work privately with these people because they got into the quarterfinals. It's like, yeah, great. That's fun. So I would suggest that screenwriting conferences, screenwriting competitions at film festivals, especially the smaller film festivals. It's just good experience, and you never know who will read it. And if you do get yourself into the competition, if you are like, I was chosen to be in this competition, you don't even have to have won. That looks good. Somebody who's looking at your stuff will say, oh, well, they may be better than I think because somebody liked their work. So those are ways to get your script out there. I do not know the value of script coverage services or things like that. I kind of like the Blacklist. You do have to pay for all these things. Blacklist seems pretty legit, pretty cool. There is a competition called from the Cinestory Foundation. Cinestory is a very legitimate group. That obviously not everyone is going to get in, but what they do is they reward the top writers in this competition with a chance to be mentored by professionals in the industry. I've worked with them. I think they're great. So those are some ways to try and get your script out there. You are welcome. And with that, I believe we have concluded today's business. See you next time.